Most people think quarters are only worth 25 cents, but some rare quarter dollars hiding in your pocket change could actually be worth thousands of dollars. Imagine finding a simple quarter dollar in your wallet, only to discover it is one of the rarest coins in American history, with a value that can change your life instantly. The year 1995 marked an important moment in American coinage and numismatic history because it was not just another year in the long production run of the Lincoln cent, but one that stood out for collectors, historians, and casual observers alike. The Lincoln penny has been one of the most iconic pieces of American coinage since its introduction in 1909, when it replaced the Indian head cent and featured the portrait of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner as a way to commemorate the centennial of Lincoln's birth. Over the decades, this penny has gone through changes in composition, minting technology, and design details, while still retaining its role as the most widely circulated coin in the United States. By 1995, the Lincoln penny had already passed through multiple eras of change, from the early bronze issues to the steel cents of 1943 during World War II, to the shift in composition in 1982, when the traditional copper alloy was abandoned for a cheaper copper-plated zinc format. The 1995 penny comes to us as part of the copper-plated zinc era, meaning that each coin was composed of a zinc core with a thin layer of copper making up its outer surface. The United States Mint began using this composition in 1982 as a cost-saving measure, because the rising price of copper made it too expensive to continue striking 1-cent coins with the old 95% copper alloy. For collectors, this change made the penny less substantial physically and also raised concerns about long-term durability, but from a purely economic standpoint, it was a necessary move. By 1995, the new composition was well established, and millions upon millions of these pennies were being struck at multiple mints, including Philadelphia, Denver, San Francisco, and for special collector issues, the West Point Mintoni. Of the reasons the 1995 penny has become so fascinating is because of the special double die obverse variety discovered that year. In coinage history, a double die occurs when, during the die creation process, the design elements are impressed twice at slightly different angles or positions, leading to a coin with doubled lettering or imagery. On the 1995 Lincoln cent, the double die obverse became one of the most dramatic and easily visible double dies of modern coinage. Collectors quickly noticed that the words "Liberty" and "In God We Trust," as well as the date 1995 itself, showed clear doubling visible without magnification. For years before, the hobby had seen doubled dies such as the famous 1955 Lincoln cent, which became legendary. But in 1995, the Mint accidentally created a modern version that electrified a new generation of collectors. Discovery of this variety sparked excitement across the coin collecting community because it was rare enough to be valuable, yet common enough that dedicated searchers could still find examples in circulation. Newspapers and coin magazines of the time reported on it, drawing the attention of the public and adding a spark of popularity to the Lincoln cent series. This event brought renewed attention to the penny and gave collectors a sense that the age of great varieties had not ended in the 1950s or 1962, but was alive in the 1990s. Outside of the doubled die obverse variety, the 1995 penny also has significance in terms of mint history. Philadelphia struck over 6 billion pennies that year. Denver added billions more, and San Francisco produced proof cents for collectors. The sheer scale of production demonstrates the continued reliance on the penny in everyday American commerce. Even though by 1995 inflation had eroded its practical purchasing power dramatically, the penny was still an essential part of transactions used in vending machines, change drawers, and coin rolls in banks. The production numbers reflected the Mint's effort to keep up with circulation demands, but also highlighted the ongoing debate about whether the penny should remain in production at all. The design of the 1995 penny remained consistent with Victor David Brenner's original portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, a design that had been introduced in 1959 to commemorate the sesquicentennial of Lincoln's birth and the 150th anniversary of his birth. the Lincoln Memorial reverse carried a special symbolism as it not only depicted an iconic national monument, but also cleverly included a small image of the Lincoln statue within the memorial, making it the only United States coin to feature the same individual on both the obverse and reverse. The design, by Frank Gasparro, had become familiar to generations of Americans, and by 1995, it was deeply ingrained in the national consciousness. From a numismatic standpoint, collectors today often look back at the 1995 penny as a transitional coin bridging the era of the classic Lincoln Memorial cent with the later changes that would come in 2009 when the Lincoln Bicentennial cents were issued, and then in 2010 when the Union Shield design replaced the memorial. But within its own time, the 1995 penny became a centerpiece of collecting because of that double die obverse, and because it gave hobbyists a reason to check their pocket change. Again, in an era when many assumed that all modern coins were too mass-produced to yield treasures in terms of value, the vast majority of 1995 pennies, whether struck at Philadelphia or Denver, carry only face value in circulated condition because so many billions were made. However, the 1995 double die obverse cent can command significant premiums, especially in high mint state grades. Examples certified by professional grading services such as PCGs or NGC often sell for hundreds of dollars, and in the very finest conditions can exceed $1,000. This makes the 1995 double die obverse one of the most valuable modern Lincoln cents, and a staple of every variety collector's wish list. Even beyond that, the proof issues from San Francisco remain desirable for typesets and proof collections, and in pristine condition with perfect grades, can also attract strong interest. What makes the 1995 Lincoln penny especially intriguing from a historical perspective is how it captures multiple layers of American history in one small coin, represents the enduring legacy of Abraham Lincoln, whose face has graced the cent for more than a century, and who remains one of the most admired figures in United States history, represents the technological challenges of minting coins by the billions, and the occasional mistakes that result in collectible varieties. It represents the economic realities of a nation where inflation had rendered the cent nearly obsolete in buying power. Yet tradition and habit kept it alive. It represents the passion of collectors who even in the 1990s were still scouring their change jars and bankrolls in search of something extraordinary. The story of the 1995 penny is therefore not just about metal and minting presses, but about people, about the ordinary Americans who use these coins every day, about the collectors who cherish them, about the mint employees who struggled to maintain quality control amid massive production quotas, and about the historians who look back and see in a simple coin the reflection of a larger cultural and economic narrative. The 1995 penny is a reminder that even the smallest denomination can carry weighty stories. When one considers the penny in the broader sweep of American coinage history, the 1995 example shows us how tradition, innovation, accident, and public fascination can intersect in unexpected ways. The Lincoln cent may only be worth 1 cent on paper, but in 1995 it was worth much more. In terms of history symbolism and collector excitement, its story is one of continuity and change, of honoring the past, while also creating new chapters for the future, and of reminding us that in our pockets, we carry not just coins, but fragments of history. In the world of American numismatics, every coin tells a story, and the 1984 Washington quarter is no exception. It carries with it a rich blend of history, design, legacy, economic context, minting details, collector intrigue, and hidden value that goes far beyond its simple 25-cent face value. To truly appreciate the 1984 quarter, we must begin with the roots of the Washington quarter itself, a coin born out of the bicentennial celebration of George Washington's birth in 1932, when the Treasury sought a new design to replace the standing Liberty quarter. The choice of Washington was deliberate, not just to honor the first president, but to cement his image as the symbol of American leadership, unity, and democracy. The artist John Flanagan was commissioned to create the design, which featured Washington's left-facing profile on the obverse and a heraldic eagle with spread wings on the reverse. This design would last uninterrupted until 1998, giving the Washington Quarter a visual identity that every American knew by heart. And by 1984, this design had been in use for more than 5 decades, making the coin at once familiar yet quietly evolving with each passing year. 1984 Washington Quarter was minted at 3 primary locations: the Philadelphia Mint, the Denver Mint, and the San Francisco Mint. Philadelphia quarters carried no mint mark. Denver quarters were the D mark, and San Francisco quarters carried the S mark, with San Francisco producing the proof. Coins meant for collectors rather than circulation. In terms of mintage numbers, Philadelphia struck over 676 million, Denver produced more than 546 million, while San Francisco struck just over 3 million proof coins. These high mintage numbers may suggest the coin is common, and indeed in circulation. Most 1984 quarters still hold only their face value. But as collectors know, rarity is not always about total numbers, but about survival conditions, strike quality errors, and varieties. 1984 Washington Quarter was struck in a composition of copper nickel clad on a pure copper core, a change introduced in 1965 when silver was eliminated from regular quarters due to rising silver prices. The clad composition gave the quarter its distinctive silvery sheen while keeping production costs low. Yet this shift away from silver still impacts how collectors view post-1964 quarters, since most have no intrinsic metal value. The 1984 quarter must be understood through other numismatic qualities, such as grading errors and historical placement of the fascinating aspects of the 1984 Washington Quarter. The state of the United States Mint during the early 1980s. It was a time of high-volume coinage. The American economy was stabilizing after the inflationary 1970 seconds, and the demand for coinage remained strong. The Philadelphia and Denver mints were running full capacity, meaning dies were often overused, leading to weak strikes, die cracks, and misaligned dies. This is where the true collector value of the 1984 quarter emerges in the form of errors and varieties. Some 1984 quarters show doubled dies on the obverse, particularly around the motto "In God We Trust" or on the word "Liberty." Other examples reveal die breaks on the eagle's wings or tail feathers on the reverse, while off-center strikes, broad strikes, and clipped planchets also exist. These anomalies are where ordinary circulation coins cross the threshold into collectible treasure. As collectors often debate the value of the 1984 quarter in high grades, a standard circulated coin remains only worth face value. However, when found in mint state grades, particularly Ms. 65 and above, values rise significantly. According to grading service population reports, the 1984 D quarter in Ms. 67 condition is scarcer than its Philadelphia counterpart and can fetch hundreds of dollars at auction. Proofs from San Francisco, when preserved with deep cameo contrast and perfect surfaces, also command premium prices. A PR70 deep cameo example can be worth several $100s depending on demand. These distinctions between circulation strikes, mint marks, and proof issues form the backbone of numismatic value for this year. From a historical standpoint, the 1984 quarter sits in an interesting position within the long Washington Quarter series. It is part of the later clad era, but still predates the radical design change that would come with the state quarters program in 1999, meaning it belongs to a period when Washington's profile and the heraldic eagle still represented American stability, consistency, and trustworthiness to millions of people handling these coins daily. Yet, because it falls into a high mintage non-silver era, it is often overlooked by casual collectors. That is precisely why dedicated numismatists study it so deeply, because within the ocean of billions of coins, even the smallest differences create significant historical and monetary value. The art of coin grading also plays A critical role in appreciating the 1984 Washington quarter. Professional graders look for strike sharpness, luster, contact marks, and eye appeal. The difference between an Ms. 64 and Ms. 67 coin may seem minimal to the untrained eye, but in the market, it can mean the difference between a few dollars and several $100s. Because so many 1984 quarters were heavily used in commerce, finding one with pristine luster and minimal bag marks is a true challenge. This scarcity of condition rarity creates demand, and demand creates value. One cannot ignore the cultural and economic backdrop of 1984 itself. This was the Reagan-era. America was experiencing renewed confidence. The Cold War was still ongoing. The Olympic Games were held in Los Angeles that summer, and technology was beginning to reshape life in unprecedented ways. Coins like the 1984 quarter were circulating in a nation of payphones, vending machines, and daily cash transactions, making them an intimate part of everyday life. Each 1984 quarter passed through countless hands, buying groceries, bus fares, or newspapers, unknowingly embedding itself into the story of ordinary Americans. In this way, the coin is not only a numismatic artifact, but a cultural snapshot of a nation in motion. For collectors today, building a complete set of Washington quarters from 1932 to 1998, the 1984 issue represents a vital link. It is not rare in the absolute sense, but it fills an important chronological role, and collectors who pursue registry sets know that high-grade examples are not easy to secure. The challenge of finding pristine survivors gives the coin a prestige that casual observers may overlook. Ultimately, the story of the 1984 Washington quarter is one of contrasts: massive mintage numbers versus scarce high-grade survivors, common clad composition versus rare error varieties, everyday pocket change versus valuable numismatic treasures. It embodies the legacy of Washington as a national icon, the enduring work of John Flanagan as a designer, and the never-ending pursuit of collectors to uncover hidden gems in ordinary coins. When we hold a 1984 Washington quarter, we are holding not just a piece of money, but a piece of history, a symbol of American stability during a transformative decade, and a reminder that even the most common coin can reveal extraordinary stories for those willing to look closely. The year 1976 was unlike any other in American history. It marked the 200th anniversary of the United States of America, and the nation prepared to celebrate its bicentennial with parades, fireworks, concerts, and countless events that honored 2 centuries of freedom, liberty, and resilience. One of the most enduring legacies of that celebration was not found in monuments or music, but rather in the change that jingled in people's pockets. For it was in that very year that the United States Mint released a unique series of coins known today as the bicentennial coinage, and among them, the Washington quarter became one of the most iconic pieces of circulating money ever struck in America, and its story stretches far beyond metal and minting. It is a story of national pride, artistry, politics, and collecting that continues to fascinate coin enthusiasts and historians nearly half a century later. 1976 Washington quarter was unlike any quarter that had come before. For the first time in American coinage history, a circulating coin was redesigned not merely to commemorate an event, but to celebrate the very essence of the nation's birth. The front of the coin still bore the familiar profile of George Washington, designed in 1932 by John Flanagan, yet the reverse was entirely new. It featured a colonial drummer, a symbol of the Revolutionary War, alongside a torch of victory and 13 stars representing the original colonies. The design by Jack L. R. was chosen through a national competition, and the symbolism it carried resonated deeply with millions of Americans. It reminded citizens not just of their revolutionary roots, but of the endurance of democracy over 2 centuries of challenges. When the Mint began striking the bicentennial quarters in 1975, production was massive and deliberate. Every quarter struck in both 1975 and 1976 carried the dual date 1776 to 1976, meaning that no Washington quarters exist with the single date 1975. This was intentional. to mark the celebration with special coinage that circulated in daily life. So when Americans went to buy a soda, a newspaper, or gasoline, they were reminded of the nation's heritage with each exchange. The coins were not mere money, they were miniature works of art embodying patriotism and history in the palm of one's hand. The production of these quarters spanned across multiple mints, including Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. The Philadelphia and Denver mints struck circulation coins, while San Francisco produced both clad-proof versions and special 40% silver issues for collectors. The silver bicentennial sets were especially treasured as they harken back to an era when circulating quarters still carried precious metal content. Though by the 1970s silver had long been removed from everyday quarters, the decision to produce silver collector editions was both a nod to tradition and a way to engage numismatists with the nation's celebration. Yet the history of the 1976 quarter goes deeper than its design and composition. It sits at the intersection of numismatic change, political pride, and economic reality. America in the 1970s faced high inflation, an energy crisis, and cultural upheaval, but the bicentennial provided a unifying moment. Coins like the Washington quarter played a surprisingly symbolic role in tying together generations. They became teaching tools for children learning about the revolution, keepsakes for families, and artifacts that linked modern America to its founding struggles. It was a reminder that even during times of challenge, the story of the nation was carried forward in small but powerful ways. Collectors today continue to study and treasure the 1976 quarters, not only for their beauty but for their variations and minting details. Some coins feature sharper strikes, others display die varieties that intrigue specialists. Proofs gleam with mirror-like surfaces, while silver issues carry an extra layer of desirability. And in the decades since their release, these quarters have appreciated in both financial and historical value. While billions were made, certain conditions such as pristine mint state examples or rare error coins can command significant premiums on the numismatic market. The 1976 bicentennial quarter thus occupies a unique place, bridging the world of everyday coinage and collectible artistry. But what truly makes the 1976 quarter fascinating is its role as a cultural marker. When historians look back at the bicentennial, they see fireworks. They see the tall ships sailing into New York Harbor. They see national pride on display across television and newspapers. But they also see the coins, the humble quarters, nickels, dimes, half dollars, and dollars that entered circulation and carried the bicentennial spirit across the nation. More than any parade or spectacle, it was the coins that endured. They were minted by the billions, passed through hands from coast to coast, tucked into piggy banks, purses, cash registers, and savings jars. And unlike parades or fireworks, they did not fade after one day. They became living symbols of the nation's 200th birthday. For nearly 2 hours, one can explore the depths of this story, from the origins of the bicentennial coinage legislation to the artistry of Jack R's drummer boy design, from the debates in Congress about how to celebrate the bicentennial to the mint's efforts in producing and distributing billions of coins. From the silver collector's editions that remain prized treasures to the many varieties, errors, and proofs that today fascinate collectors and historians alike, the 1976 quarter is more than a coin. It is a gateway into American history, an object that unites art, economics, politics, and culture into a single small disc of metal. Every scratch on a circulated bicentennial quarter tells the story of its journey through the hands of Americans who lived in that transformative decade. Whether it bought a child candy from the corner store or served as change for a tank of gas during the energy crisis, whether it was carried overseas by soldiers or stashed in a collector's album in pristine condition, each coin is a witness to a nation celebrating its endurance and resilience for 2 centuries. And that is what makes the 1976 quarter not just a piece of money, but a piece of living history.